Hey Nerdinas! So this is the last part of our 4-part series on the internet and how exactly it works. In our previous videos, we covered some basic networking concepts, including what exactly the internet is, and also we covered the DNS or domain name system, how a domain name is converted into an IP. And lastly, in the video just before this one, we were able to practically look at 2 commands, nslookup and traceroute, and also talk about the concept of cache. So in this video, we will be talking about how exactly the browser begins to load the content on a page. First, the IP address is sent to the browser. In my case, I was using Google Chrome. Think of the browser as a sort of middleman that establishes what is called a Transmission Control Protocol connection, or TCP for short, with the IP address of Nerdina.org. A protocol is simply a common language that is understood by the browser and the IP address. Of course, if we all came up with our own languages and sets of rules that were used to communicate, then both the browser and the IP address would not understand how to communicate with each other. Essentially, the Transmission Control Protocol connection enables 2 computer systems to connect and exchange data by using a common language and a set of rules. Okay, so now how is the page loaded? So after the connection has been established, the user or the client sends what is called a Hypertext Transfer Protocol request to the web server. An HTTP request enables a computer to send a request for a file and the web server to send back a response. A web server contains files for each page on the site with code. Typically, this code is written in HTML. Web servers can be bought individually or are offered by hosting companies. iPower.com hosts Nerdina.org's pages. So in this case, the user, after they send the HTTP request, will reach iPower.com's web server. This right here is Nerdina.org's web server, hosted by iPower. Here, you can see each and every page that is part of Nerdina's website is stored. So let's find the home page right here and look at what's inside. Here, we primarily have HTML code. HTML is a language that is understood by web browsers, and therefore, the code that is typed here is able to be displayed on a web page. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So what happens when the HTTP request is sent to iPower? What exactly does the web server do? So the web server, based on the page you are trying to load, say that I typed in Nerdina.org. The default page that is loaded would be called index.php. So the web server would search and find index.php, the page that I just showed you. Now, information on the page and each and every line of code would be separated into what are called packets. Packets are just small chunks of information. So the web server would then respond by sending each byte of information in every packet to the browser. The browser is then able to load the response and display the page for the user to see. And now we have our end result. So if I type in Nerdina.org, now on the browser, the web page is displayed. So let's just go through a quick summary of what we have learned about today. We first learned about the basic concepts of networking, and that the internet is an example of a wide area network. Next, we learned that domain names, for example nerdina.org, are only understood by humans and cannot be processed by computers. Next, we come to IP addresses. IP addresses are unique numerical values, and each domain name is mapped to an IP address. There are two main types of IP addresses, IPv4 and IPv6. And IPv6 is able to accommodate the growing number of devices that are connected to the internet due to the Internet of Things. After that, the domain name is sent to the domain name system. The domain name system is responsible for converting a domain name, nerdina.org, into its corresponding IP address. Next, we talked about the commands nslookup and traceroute, and these show us the exact path that is taken to find, given a domain name, the corresponding IP address. After we have the corresponding IP address, it is sent to the browser, and the browser is then able to establish a TCP connection, TCP standing for Transmission Control Protocol, with the web server. And from there, the web server finds the correct page that the user is looking for, and an HTTP request is sent to load 1 byte at a time the information from the page. And as each line of individual code from the page loads, eventually the whole page is displayed for the user to see. Okay, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you have enjoyed and have learned exactly how, given a domain name, a web page is able to load on a browser. This essentially tells us how the internet works. Next video, we will be talking more about routers and how we are able to connect to the internet in the first place. From each Nerdina to all Nerdinas. Adios.